Hey everyone, and welcome back to another meeting of the Tropical Rum Society. As always, I'm your host Matt, and today we're going to take a look at our first white rum, Plantation 3 Stars. So as usual, we'll start off with a little bit about Plantation, then we'll jump into more specifically about the actual 3-star rum itself, and then we'll get into the tasting a little bit later on. So let's kick it off and learn a little bit about Plantation. Usually we'd be talking about the rum's distiller at this point, but today we're going to be talking about the rum's producer, because while they do have a distillery over in the Caribbean, the Plantation brand is better known for finding a bunch of rums from around the islands, aging them over in the Caribbean, and then aging them a second time back in France so that they can have their unique flavors from the French oak finish. The reason that they do this is because the owner of Plantation is Maison Ferrand, which is a French cognac company. So they use those cognac barrels to do the actual finishing of most of their rums. We're not going to go too much into that process. I'm not going to explain it too much in this video because we have some other Plantation rums coming up in the future and I'll talk about it then. So if you want to find out about that, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below so that you can find out when that video comes out. So for now, I'll just say that back in the 90s, the owner of Maison Ferrand, Alexandre Gabriel, went over to the islands of the Caribbean and scoured through them, finding some of the best rums that he could to start Plantation Rum as a brand. And today we're talking about Plantation 3-star, so that whole double aging process I just mentioned is not overly relevant for this one, but we'll talk about that more in the future. So again, make sure you subscribe to find out about that. That being said, let's jump into Plantation 3-star and a little bit more about the specifics of what it's made of. So one of the first things that you'll notice when you take a look at the label of this bottle is that we have 3 different countries listed as having produced rums for this blend. Yes, this is a blended rum. There's no age statement on the bottle, but Plantation's provided a fair bit of information on their website. According to Plantation, the rum from Barbados is unaged. We have a 2 to 3 year old Trinidad rum in there, and we've got a blend of unaged and 10-year-old Jamaican rum in there too. So Plantation takes all of those different rums, blends them together so that we can kind of balance things in terms of the flavor profile. Since each of the islands has its own unique way of making the rum and its own different terroir, I can never say that word. Let's try again. Terroir, I think. Every island has its own one of those, which basically means it has its own earth and its own kind of distinct way that things grow on the island, and that impacts the flavor. Plantation mentions that the Barbados rum gives us sophistication and mouthfeel, the Trinidad rum provides elegance, and then the Jamaican rum provides a great structure and a little bit of funk and rustic edge, as they put it as well. All these liquids are ultimately mixed together and blended into the Plantation 3-star, which comes out at 41.2% alcohol, which seems very specific to me, but that's enough about what's in the bottle. Let's take a look at the bottle itself. The 3-star bottle is pretty typical of what you'd see from a Plantation rum. It's got that really elongated kind of shape. It's got the embossed Plantation logo on there. We have the wraparound label, which is full of detail, and it really gives it quite a nice, elegant look. When you see it on a shelf, it's one that you definitely gravitate towards because you want to be able to see what's on that label and find out what's going on. On top of the bottle, we find a synthetic cork with a plastic top, which does detract a little bit from how sophisticated the rest of the bottle looks, having that plastic there rather than wood. But overall, it's a nicer touch than having a screw-off top, so we can deal with that. Being a white rum, the liquid is obviously pretty clear, but if you remember back to what I was saying before, we do have some 2 and 3 and 10-year aged rums in here, so we would expect to see a little twinge of color in there. Plantation actually carbon filters this rum to remove those colors and turn it into that almost silvery appearance that you can see here. I think I've been talking long enough while this is in the bottle. Let's get it out into the glass and take a look at it a little bit more closely. So we'll just go ahead and pour some of this in here, and you can see practically like water as I pour it in there. And as always, I've poured a little bit too much. But I do love rum, so I never complain. Now, as I give this a little bit of a swirl, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it, but there's actually a little bit of a thin layer being left on the glass here. So this is definitely kind of like a sticky, dense look to the rum. Not sure how that's going to impact it in terms of its actual mouthfeel, but it definitely looks pretty sticky. All right, let's get that nose in the glass. There's definitely a tiny bit of a burn on the nostrils inside of my nose. I can feel them twitching a little bit, but it's not too bad. There's definitely not an overpowering sense of alcohol. It's definitely very sweet smelling. It's got a little bit of kind of a licorice vibe to it. Pretty gentle, I would say. It doesn't really, it's not big and bold in its flavors. It's pretty mellow and laid back. The thing that it's making me think of is if you were at kind of like a poolside thing where there were a whole bunch of people and someone's got some coconut sunscreen on. I don't know why it's giving me that mental image, but yeah, just some person like on the far side of the pool, coconut sunscreen that's just like coming across the water. Yeah, that's the image that it's giving me in my mind. So with that, let's jump into the taste. It's a bit bitey at first. It's a bit rough around the edges, and it's actually getting a little bit more intense as time goes by. It's a little bit more grassy and a little bit more herbal than those smells that I had. Not really coconut. Like, it smelled like coconut, but the taste is more vanilla. There's honey, there's grass to it. It's very different to the way that it smelled. There's also this weird sensation that I'm getting. It's like a warm, smooth mouthfeel, but it still kind of tastes rough. Like, it's smooth to feel, but the taste is rough. I think much like the glass, it's leaving some sort of kind of residue in my mouth. It makes me feel like a dog that's eaten some peanut butter, because you can hear that I'm like smacking my lips and mouth and tongue. So I think that's similar to the glass, how it's stuck there. It's kind of coating the inside of my mouth as well. I think there's some on the tongue too, and it feels strange. Like, it's not unpleasant, but it feels like there's something wrapping around your tongue, which is a weird feeling. I don't know if I love it or hate it. Maybe you should try the rum yourself, and then drop down in the comments below what you think. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Compared to other rums, this one seems to be more of like an experience to it. There's a bit of flavor going on, but more noticeable is the way that it feels in your mouth and feels in your throat, rather than how much it tastes. I'm not being overwhelmed with flavor. I'm being made to think about a lot of other things that are going on in that experiential realm. Overall, final verdict, this is a rum that I would probably not recommend to be sipping on all day. It's pretty rough and kind of strange in the way that it feels without having a huge amount of flavor in this situation. That being said, this does make for a pretty good mixer. So I've had this in mojitos, I've had this in daiquiris, and it actually does pretty well at being an accentuating flavor to those drinks. But on its own, probably little too intense for me. With the taste of this rum and the way that this bottle looks, it's definitely not one that you're going to see when you're just starting out drinking and you just want to go and get as blitzed as possible. It's much more refined than that, but it's definitely not so refined that you'll be wanting to drink it by itself all night. So it's a good middle ground and definitely a great mixer. Would highly recommend getting yourself a bottle if you're interested. Make sure you let me know down in the comments below what you've thought. And as always, let me know what you're keen to see next. For now, that's going to be it for the Plantation 3-star. Let's go get this over on the shelf, and I'll see you for the next meeting.